Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Sandy Bottom Homestead. It is a glorious day on this beautiful planet, and we're going to plant our first plants of 2024 today. That's right. The very first plants for 2024 are going in the garden. Well, kind of the garden, the greenhouse, but I'll explain to you what's going on. And this is kind of the opening precipice to the planting season, in which we talk a lot about how we plant, because there's a way to do it successfully and repetition is key. So the time has come to clear this row out right in front and drop these bad girls in. We're gonna put these Caraflex cabbages in the greenhouse, and we chose these specifically for the greenhouse. Now, I can't stress this enough when it comes to picking your varieties or your plants for whatever space, but sometimes you need to be very specific. And in this small greenhouse, which is not very big, we can't put a full-size cabbage in here. So for instance, if I take you out here to show you our other cabbages that are growing, I mean, look how big these plants are. You know, that's going to take up a lot of valuable real estate in our greenhouse. So we chose these Caraflex cabbages, which I don't have an example to show you right now, but basically they grow like this. So they're going to be pointy, supposedly. So we're going to see. It's still the middle of January. Today is actually really nice out at 65 degrees, but next week we're supposed to get into the 20s, low 20s at night. So I figure if we have about 10 days to do that, we can go ahead and get them in the ground and get them comfortable. And then when that cold weather comes, they can be situated and they'll be protected in here as well. So it won't be in the low 20s in here. It'll be probably about 25 or 26 degrees in here at minimum. So we can at least keep that going and, you know, give it a little bit of protection. And the heat during the day is going to cause them to grow faster. So that's something across the board that I've said is it's not necessarily keeping them from being cold, it's the recovery from it. So if it wasn't going to get down to 20 degrees, let's say it was going to get down to 25, I would go ahead and put them in this garden and put the low tunnel over it. And that'll give it the protection and the recovery time that they need after the freeze. But that's not what we're sitting with right now. And I need to fill up part of my greenhouse so I can make it a little bit more productive. So we're gonna go ahead and add these plants. I'm all about plug and play in here, but I think the best course of action is to clear as much out of here to give them space. Like these bok choys are doing fine. We could give them another probably 2 weeks and we'd have full blown bok choys in here. But to be honest, I have another row of them and I'm just tired of eating them. And I can use this space more efficiently. And not to mention behind that, we kind of tested out cramming in some plants. And when you overplant stuff, like these are radishes. So, you know, we started to get a couple radishes, you know, we'll keep that one. But then you get stuff like this. And this is just, you know, you can't eat the same radish. It's a scarlet globe or a champion radish, one of the two. But these just don't really do well. So we're going to go ahead and just pull all of this up and leave this space in between the plants open. And at the same time, I'm actually going to leave this mustard here because it's hanging over and it'll create a little bit of shade to get these plants just a little bit more comfortable, because even though they're done hardening off, we've switched them to a new area and we want to give them a little bit of protection for a couple days. But once we come out and we harvest all these leaves, then it's going to be game on. So that's the plan of action for this. It could be that we adjust a little bit, but I highly doubt it. These are definitely important to protect, and you want to, this is just using nature to protect basically your investment or your plan. A handful of radishes left in here, not many, but I think giving it that extra airflow in the greenhouse is going to help too, because this dramatically cuts down in the amount of mold that will come up in the greenhouse. So once we clear all this out, you'll see how much space there is for these new plants to grow. And I mean, of all those radishes, we've gotten, like this one is a little small, but it is what it is. And we probably got about 5 or 6 out of here. I didn't plant a whole lot, but you know, we want to try. You don't learn unless you try to put stuff in and just see how it'll grow. And we're not going to waste these bok choy. We will eat them, but instead of having 4 meals, we're just gonna have one meal with all of these bok choys. Make sure that I don't hit my drip line, but I'm just gonna come through and make a furrow. Nice and deep furrow, kind of cultivate the soil a little bit, twist it up, mix it up, get some of those roots out. And with me I'm still new to this whole drip system deal, so this is a good opportunity for me to see how it's actually been watering and just kind of go from there. And I can see like the top looks really dry, but the bottom underneath looks good. So I'm not going to complain too much about that. It is tricky working in a small space like this, but even if you don't have a greenhouse and you have like a small garden bed, this is a good way to get used to working with that. So like I nicked my drip line here, but I don't think it's going to be an issue. So once we get our furrow made, we have to move on to what I feel is the most important part of planting something. The important thing is to give it that pre-fertilizer. I can't stress this enough. Once I started doing a pre-planting fertilizer, it really made a difference. And I can actually, it's crazy. The top of the soil, I can feel the temperature difference, and down underneath it, it's cooler underneath. So that's good to know. We might do something about that, I don't know. But for right now, I'm just gonna focus on planting my cabbages. There's not much I can do about that. And I'm just gonna put a good sprinkling of just well-balanced 10-10-10 fertilizer. I'm out of nitrogen. Usually I use like blood meal or something, and we'll come back after I get to the store and purchase some, and we're gonna fertilize this whole garden with some blood meal, or the whole greenhouse, actually the whole garden, because this is really nitrogen hungry time of year. And if you think about it, by the time these plants get in here and they start getting comfortable, this is gonna start breaking down and feeding them. One of the issues that I have, and it's just something small to get used to when it comes to using drip tape, is you can't just put the soil on the surface. I have to work it in as well, so it'll start to break down because the water doesn't hit, especially in the greenhouse. There's no rain. So I can easily do that with like a hose or something, and I will come back and water, the whole garden in here with hose and wet the surface. But that soil, that fertilizer needs to be in contact with the soil and really be in it. So I do have to mix it up by hand sometimes, but it's a small price to pay for the ease of taking care of this section of the garden. These are the Caraflex cabbages, and they're about 6 weeks old. Now let's see how well we did raising them. So I can see that roots are just starting to come out of the bottom. So that's good. That means that it's not overly root bound in here. But now when we pull them out, we're really going to see how root bound they became. So if I can gently pull it out. And so we caught this at the exact right time. You can see that right here, it's not wrapping around a lot, and that's good. That means the roots are primed and they're ready to go. Once they start wrapping really hard in the plants, in the pots, it's hard to get the roots to spread out. So we want to kind of stay on top of it and just try to eliminate that as much as possible. And that's where your timing is going to come out good. So I could have given them a couple more weeks, but we'd really be messing with a little bit of overpod or root bound issues. So I don't really want to do that. But let me get all this planted, and then we'll see what it's going to look like. And honestly, I can't tell until it gets in the ground how well our spacing is going to be, but I'm going to do the best that I can. I'm assuming that you guys have been watching this channel for a little bit, and you've seen the seed starting stuff, and you've seen everything, and you know that we're doing custom seed schedules, so there's an email below. But if you have seen all that and you've changed your planting date to some extent for some of the vegetables, let us know in the comments below when you plan to plant your first vegetable for the year 2024 in your garden. So let us know what you're doing and when your planting dates are going to be. All right, so we got them in, and you can see we got 6 in here. I wanted to get 8, and I may drop another one in back here. If I can get 2 more in the back, I might do that. But I think this is going to do good, and the hope is if these grow like they're supposed to, they should grow more in an up pattern than out. So there will be some overlapping of leaves, but hopefully it won't be too bad. And I mean, worst case scenario, I can come in and just remove every other one. I think that may be a little bit excessive, but we'll see. And you can see how right now, like this leaf, you can see the sun hitting it. And if you were to move it out of the way, it'll hit that plant. So this is just kind of helping to shade the rest of it. Today is going to get cloudy. I had said in a previous video that you need to make sure that you plant in the afternoon when the sun's low, but because it's going to be cloudy, it's going to be, you know, they're going to get the protection they need. We're getting a little bit of a coastal storm tonight, so we'll have a little bit of clouds tomorrow, and then it'll clear up and everything should be good. And with the sun going higher, we should get some pretty good growth going on in here. I'm seeing a lot of growth occurring now. I mean, these mustards are starting to grow faster, which is, like I said previously, like typically my greenhouse around January 15th, which it's just before that, will start to grow a lot faster. And so that means that this is now really going to be, I think, an optimal time to get this planted. If we think about it in the grand scheme of things and planting wise, and these are about 80-day cabbages. So usually they say from seed to harvest, but that is not my experience. So what we're going to do is, especially because it's getting warmer, we're going to feed heavily in here. We're going to be injecting in the fertilizer injector, using granular fertilizers. All of it's organic, and then just trying to push the growth as much as possible. And so what we're hoping is we can get some cabbages out of here by roughly March. And then we can kind of reevaluate our situation here. And what I'm hoping to do is to insert some tomato or something like that about a month before our last frost date, just to kind of see how that'll work. I think with the temperature being raised because of the tanks of water in the back and everything being sealed up, we could maybe raise the temperature a little bit and get it to where we can grow something earlier. So that's my plan so far. Doesn't mean that's how it's going to work, but we can always hope and dream, right? And so the key with the greenhouse is to remember that, and this is where everything that I've been saying gets confusing, but just stick with me here. This greenhouse raises the zone for this little area by 1. So if I'm in which zones don't typically matter, but when we have to think about it in this aspect is that it's raising the lowest low temperature. So it won't necessarily kill it, and it's going to speed up. Well, this doesn't have anything to do with zone, but it's going to also move our last frost date up. So because it's in my area, in my yard, in a new zone, in my yard, based on the weather here, it's like a microclimate being built inside of this greenhouse. So it will raise it a little bit, and it hopefully should cause us to plan out a little bit earlier, but the low temperatures are not necessarily high enough to grow some of these things. So we have to be very careful about how we move forward with this. So if we can get the frost date to be up a little bit earlier and it to be about 5 degrees at minimum warmer as it starts to warm up outside of the greenhouse, then I think we can get it planted a little bit earlier. But I mean, just by pulling the scraps out, that's what we harvested, which isn't anything to write home about, but you know what? It's still food. And then we've got food for our chickens over here. Now, our chickens are trying to start laying again. They typically take a break in the wintertime, and we don't put lights in the coop or anything to trick them because we want to for them to have a natural life cycle, and doing that kind of lowers their lifespan, and we don't want to do that. It's not fair. We're gonna give these ladies these greens. You guys want some radishes? Little dinosaurs, man. They're just gonna crush it. Goodbye.